1 in 3 homes sold in America right now are bought entirely with cash. And if you're under 35, there's a good chance you've heard it's impossible for your generation to break into the housing market. But here's a stat that will totally flip your assumptions. According to Redfin, 30% of Gen Z, yes, people in their mid-20s, already own a home as of 2023. So how are they doing it while home sales just hit a 30-year low? Are they getting secret help? Or is there actually a roadmap you could follow, even if you don't have family money, a trust fund, or a 6-figure job? In this video, I'm breaking down the exact playbook Gen Z buyers are using before the next wave of cash investors wipes out even more affordable homes. Stick around, because the 5 strategies I'll reveal could be the difference between scrolling Zillow with envy and actually collecting your first house keys in the next 24 months. Let's start with the uncomfortable truth. No matter how hard you work, the odds are absolutely stacked against young buyers right now. Mortgage rates have bounced all over the place. Home prices keep climbing, and every headline screams about housing being out of reach. But the data tells a more complicated story. And if you're smart about it, a more hopeful one. First, what's really going on? As of 2023, 30% of Gen Z, that's people in their mid-20s, already own homes, according to Redfin. That might surprise you given all the talk about affordability crises. What's their secret? It's all about adapting to the new rules of real estate. Now, quick question. Have you ever been outbid by a cash buyer or felt locked out, like it's just not your turn? If so, drop a lock in the comments. Let's see just how many of us are facing the same wall. Because building community around shared struggles is the first step, breaking through them. Let's dive deeper. Unlike previous generations, Gen Z isn't focused on the expensive coastal cities their parents may have grown up in. More than any prior cohort, they're willing to look for up-and-coming areas and prioritize walkability, community, and lifestyle over raw square footage. According to a 2023 America at Home study, 54% of younger buyers care more about access to nature, walkability, than about having a giant house. In fact, we'll get into the precise trade-offs people are making in a minute. But don't get fooled. Many Gen Z buyers aren't doing this alone. Some are getting what's often called the family boost, getting help from parents or relatives, sometimes via outright gifts for down payments, sometimes as co-signers on their mortgage. This isn't just a small slice of the market either. Gifts, assistance, and even generational wealth play a massive role in the reshaping of who can buy and where. And if you find yourself with no such support, it's not your fault you're not ahead. It just means you're playing on a tougher field. Here's something surprising. Many buyers, especially Gen Z, are pooling dual incomes, whether as young couples or even as friends, to qualify. This is a huge shift from older times. Before the 1970s, one income often bought the typical house in American cities. But with inflation, wage stagnation, and skyrocketing home values, it's a new game. Why does this matter? Because the numbers say it all. Gold has now surpassed $4,000 an ounce, reflecting not just a shiny metal's popularity, but what happens when dollars lose their buying power, meaning you need more of them just to keep up. Now, we hit the first of the 5 strategies Gen Z buyers are using. Think of this as your first step. Roadmap. Family assistance and gifts. Many use financial support for their down payment. Sometimes a gift, sometimes as a co-signer. This pushes up demand and can inflate housing prices by letting buyers enter who normally wouldn't qualify, leaving others, often those without outside help, still locked out. 2. Dual or combined incomes. Young couples, friends, even siblings are pooling resources to make the numbers work. If your monthly after-tax income is $4,000, and your co-buyers is similar, suddenly you can qualify for a mortgage on a $300,000 home in Grand Rapids instead of stretching for a tiny condo in LA. Comment if you've ever considered buying with a friend instead of going it alone. I'd love to see who else is thinking outside the box. 3. Creative financing and down payment assistance. FHA loans, down payment assistance, and specialty programs are tempting, even necessary for some. Many see these as free money. But it's important to realize, if everyone used these, it would only drive up prices further in the long term, leaving true affordability unchanged. It's a complex trade-off, a bit like what's happened with student loans and medical insurance subsidies. If you take advantage, do so with open eyes, and read the fine print for things like PMI income thresholds and repayment terms. 4. Side hustles and extra income. Saving up for a down payment is tougher now than ever. So many Gen Z buyers are working 2 or even 3 jobs, picking up gig work, and diving into side hustles to accelerate savings or reduce debt. If you're making an extra $800 a month via Uber, DoorDash, or freelance work and save it all, you could pile up an extra $9,600 in a year. That's a serious chunk of a starter down payment. 5. Geographic arbitrage, moving to opportunity. The most game-changing strategy Gen Z is using is simple. Go where the opportunity is, even if that means moving far from your hometown. Instead of trying to buy a shoebox in Silicon Valley, they're flocking to cities where homes are within reach and jobs are growing. Listen closely, because I'm about to show you exactly where these opportunities are, with numbers. Now, let's anchor these strategies in the real world, with some specific examples of market hotspots and what they mean for young buyers. Gen Z hotspots. Where are young buyers actually winning? Here's where the biggest clusters of Gen Z buyers are right now, with up-to-date data to back it. Grand Rapids, Michigan, leading the country with 31.2% of 2025 mortgages coming from Gen Z. Median home price, a little over $300,000. For context, that's less than half of what you'd pay in most coastal cities, and way more manageable on combined incomes. Salt Lake City, 25% of mortgages coming from Gen Z. Median home price, $400,000. Not cheap, but relative to salaries and opportunities, it's proving accessible for determined buyers. Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 24% Gen Z mortgage share. Median price, $400,000. Surprising given that Milwaukee used to be a bargain, but also a prime example of rising demand, even in the heartland. Curiosity Loop. I'll spotlight a Gen Z buyer who cracked Milwaukee's market with nothing but diligent savings and emphasis. A creative side hustle. But before I get there, let's talk next about the cities stealing everyone's thunder on pure affordability. Des Moines, Iowa. 21.5% Gen Z, $267,000 median home price, arguably one of the best values for safety, community, and walkable urban living. Omaha, Nebraska, 21% Gen Z, $274,000 median. Again, numbers that are almost unthinkable in most big U.S. markets. Here's a quick visual. If you're in a city where the entry-level house is $800,000, your options are severely limited. But in Omaha or Des Moines, the same $50,000 down payment could put you in a $250,000 to $50,000 house with a 20% deposit. No special tricks needed. Micro CTA. If you're from one of these cities, or move to one for better opportunity, comment your city below. Let's crowdsource the best affordable spots. Now, just to drive this home, let's paint a personal picture. I want you to meet Sarah, a composite Gen Z buyer age 27. She grew up in Chicago, saved $12,000 working 2 jobs, and instead of competing in her local market, researched cities for 6 months before settling on Grand Rapids. She and a college friend combined savings for a 10% down payment on a $310,000 starter home, used an FHA loan to get in, and kept monthly payments under $2,000. No family gifts, just grit and research. If you think it's impossible, look to examples like this. Imperfect but real. Pattern break. But let's be brutally honest. There's a flip side. Not everyone can move. Not everyone can find a co-buyer. And even in these affordable markets, price tags are historically high. Let's talk about the very real trade-offs and sacrifices people are making right now. Latest trends? The reality of today's housing choices, according to a massive national survey, Gearcoats at Home 2023. Here's the reality check. 40% of buyers would take a smaller home just to get their foot in the door. 33% would live without a garage. 25% would accept smaller rooms. 50% would be interested in a rent-to-own scenario. And 32% would be willing to consider a modular or manufactured home. The point, the hunger for homeownership is alive and well, even if it means downsizing dreams. But here's the kicker. Even with all these sacrifices, many people still can't afford to buy. Home sales are at 30-year lows, and making trade-offs can sometimes mean you end up in the wrong neighborhood, a subpar school district, or a home that doesn't really fit your life. That's why buyer's remorse is spiking, with 2021 to 2023 buyers already selling within just a couple of years. Here's an eye-opener. 64% of younger households are now only 1 or 2 people, so their focus is on flexible, efficient spaces, not huge square footage. Builders are slowly responding, but the market still hasn't caught up, leaving a mismatch between what's available and what people actually need: wellness and amenity-first living. Just like the Gen Z buyers we profiled, earlier today's buyers of all ages are craving wellness, walkability, and access to outdoor activities over more space. To put numbers on it, 54% prioritize access to nature, 48% want trails, 45% want small parks. Downsizing isn't just about price, it's about lifestyle. Visual pattern break. Picture a classic mid-century suburban neighborhood from the 1940s to 1960s. Think 1,200 to 1,500 square feet. Easy walks to local schools and parks, tight-knit communities. These houses were built for exactly the life so many buyers, especially young ones, are chasing again today. And back then, the prices were $70,000 to $100,000. But now fast forward to 2025. I was in Talina, California, where I saw a modest home listed for $1,375,000. Even after a $60,000 price cut, it was still out of reach for most adults of any age. The median single family in America now exceeds $400,000 in many cities, even places nobody would have predicted a decade ago. If you're dreaming big, that doesn't mean you'll never buy a higher-priced home. Just that now's not the time for most first-timers. Curiosity loop. But if $1 million plus prices seem absurd, what's actually fueling these numbers? Why are median home prices still rising across much of the country, even as most people feel locked out? The truth about all-cash buyers. Here's the hidden engine. All-cash purchases are at historic highs. Realtor.com reports that 32.8% of home sales in the first half of 2025 were entirely cash. That's a bit down from last year, but still well above the pre-pandemic normal of 28.6%. Why does this matter to you? Because high cash buyer concentration distorts every metric. Wealthy buyers, often purchasing homes over $500,000 or $1 million, skew the median price up across the U.S. Over half of sales in the $500,000 plus and $1 million plus ranges are all cash, and 50% of homes over $2 million closed without financing. Now for affordable homes. 2/3 of homes under $100,000 also go to cash buyers, often investors or older buyers looking for investment properties, downsizing opportunities. This explains why, if you're shopping for an entry-level home, you might get out-muscled by people who don't need a mortgage. Miami is the extreme example here. 43% of homes in 2025 are selling for cash. San Antonio and Kansas City follow close behind, with nearly 39%. Birmingham, Houston, St. Louis, all around the 38 to 39% mark. If you're in any of these markets, you know how tough it is to compete. Micro CTA. If you've ever lost a deal to a cash buyer or felt like you never stood a chance, drop your story below. What's the biggest obstacle you've hit in your search? Maybe by sharing we can help each other find workarounds. But let's zoom out. Despite all these headwinds, home sales nationwide are at 30-year lows, and the buyer's market is quietly taking shape in many regions. This could mean opportunity for patient, persistent buyers. especially as overpriced metros begin to level off, pivot. What about interest rates? Will things get easier soon? Fed rate cuts. Will they really help buyers? There's a huge myth floating around that as soon as the Fed cuts rates, mortgage rates will plummet and homes will become more affordable. The facts. In September 2024, after years of hiking rates due to inflation, the Fed started slashing its benchmark by 50 basis points. What happened? 30-year mortgage rates actually rose by 80 basis points, jumping back above 7% at the start of 2025. Fast forward. As of now, 30-year fixes sit around 6.3%. But inflation expectations remain high, and the 10-year Treasury yield, which mortgage rates track, has kept climbing. This means that unless inflation really cools off, it won't matter much how many times the Fed cuts. Mortgage rates may stay stubbornly high, or even tick up if inflation worsens, the only scenario likely to force lower rates. An official economy-defining recession announcement, which usually lags well behind the reality on the ground anyway. Take this as a caution. Don't sit on the sidelines waiting for some big magical Fed move to cut rates. Focus instead on the levers you can control, saving more, getting creative, and being ready to pounce when the right window opens in your market. As proof, consider this. Consumers already feel the pain. Credit card spending is flat. Travel bookings are down, and discretionary shopping is softening. A sharper slowdown would mean more affordable loans, but it could also shake up jobs, wages, and overall affordability. So prepare for multiple scenarios: stock market checkpoint, housing home builder, and lender performance. The high-rate environment isn't just a headache for buyers. Home builders and home improvement retailers like Lowe's and Home Depot are underperforming, with the iShares U.S. Construction ETFITB down 15% year over year. Even lenders are struggling, with mortgage application volumes low for 2 years straight. Why? Buyers just don't have the cash or aren't willing to take on expensive debt for big purchases or remodels. Remember, 70% of U.S. GDP rests on consumer spending. So as home transactions slow and pain spreads, more market correction could be on the table. Progress marker. Let's step back and recap. So far, you've learned how Gen Z is breaking in with family help, creative combinations, do cities, and a willingness to make big lifestyle trade-offs. I've shown you the hard numbers on how cash buyers skew both ends of the market and why headline prices don't always reflect what's happening on the ground. Now let's talk pure tactics. 5 Gen Z home buying strategies you can actually try. 1. Move for opportunity. Consider Midwest or Southern metros, where the cost-to-income ratio is far more favorable. Research job growth, local economies, and quality of life factors the way a corporate headhunter would. 2. Pool resources. If family help is out of reach, partner with friends, siblings, or significant others. Set up clear agreements and legal safeguards. Sites like Rocket Lawyer can help you draft co-ownership agreements. 3. Pursue creative financing. Check out FHA, USDA, and down payment assistance programs, but understand the real long-term costs of mortgage insurance, upfront fees, and potential resale restrictions. Research with resources like NerdWallet, which break down actual qualifying rules and cost calculators. Maximize earned and side income. Identify freelance or gig work, think Upwork, DoorDash, rideshare, to boost your savings rate. Use personal budgeting tools like YNAB or Mint to funnel side income directly to a home fund so you see real progress. Evaluate sacrifices. Be intentional about what you're willing to trade: space, location, amenities. Make a written list before house hunting. Tools like Zillow and Redfin let you filter by essentials, so you don't get distracted by homes outside your realistic range. Engagement prompt. Which of these 5 are you most likely to use, or have already tried? Which ones are out of reach for your situation? Jump into the comments. Your feedback will help all of us learn what's actually realistic in the ground. Curiosity Loop, coming up in just a moment. I'll summarize a free checklist you can use to avoid the biggest mistakes first-time buyers make in this market. If you want it, stick it around or grab the download linked in the description. The bottom line: the odds are tough, but for those willing to adapt, strategize, and accept new trade-offs, homeownership isn't dead. It's just different. If you're feeling stuck, discouraged, or blindsided by stories of others getting ahead, remember that your path may be slower, but it's far from impossible. Action, not hope, is what bridges the gap, even in a market this wild. Let's do a quick recap. Today, you learned 5 real-world strategies Gen Z buyers are using to break into the market: family gifts, pooling incomes, creative financing, maximizing side income, and moving to more affordable cities. We saw how 30% of Gen Z already own homes, even as cash buyers scoop up 1 in 3 properties, and home sales hover at 30-year lows. The data is clear. Success isn't about waiting for the market to magically get easier. It's about understanding trade-offs, leveraging every available option, and staying plugged into real stats, not just headlines. Here's what to do next. 1. This week, make a list of your must-haves and nice-to-haves in a first home, factoring in space, location, and financing options. 2. Use online tools like Zillow or Redfin to research 5 affordable metro areas, even if a move is just a long-term plan. 3. Connect with others who've bought recently in our Money Masters community so you can learn what actually worked. 4. If you're serious, explore down payment assistance via sites like downpaymentresource.com and start tracking your savings with Mint or YNAB. 5. Download the free checklist linked in the description. First-time buyer moves that work in 2024, which walks you through every action step in detail. You should start seeing concrete progress in the next 3 months. Maybe that's building your down payment. Maybe it's connecting with a co-buyer, or maybe just landing a lender pre-approval. If you stay at it for 6 to 12 months, you'll be positioned to act when opportunity knocks, even if the market doesn't change overnight. Homeownership isn't out of reach if you adapt. And if you want more strategies like this every week, subscribe to Money Masters now. Next video, I'll break down the biggest first-time buyer mistakes to avoid in 2024, so you don't learn lessons the hard way. Leave a comment with your #1 home buying question, or what's kept you on the sidelines. I read every reply. And remember, for a free downloadable checklist, hit the link below or the pinned comment. All information provided is for educational purposes only. Please consult a licensed real estate or financial advisor for advice specific to your situation. No outcome is ever guaranteed. Always do your own due diligence before making more financial decisions.